Let's see what else. Jacob Yarbrough says, big win for the Cardiac Dogs over those lousy, stinking Gators. Diamond Dogs walking it off last night on ESPN2 against Florida. You love to see that. He says, way to steal the first game of the series with Cannon going tonight. That's right. I also kind of noticed that because I was not able to be at home last night and watch the game. I had some family stuff I had to take care of. But when I found out, hey, not only did they walk it off, but they walked it off with Cannon coming up tonight. That's been their big Friday night arm. All of a sudden now you got a chance to really take this series against Florida. And all of a sudden you get something against the Gators last night, which this team has desperately needed, which are big performances in kind of non-Cannon starts. And last night they clearly got one. So that was a great performance, as Jacob points out there, and a very, very nice night for the Diamond Dogs. Late night. Game don't think didn't start till 8 o'clock there, but good times all the way around. Ohio Dog. Very funny. I'll read this just because it's funny. He says, today is my ex-wife's birthday. Every year on this day, I am reminded I am, in fact, the fool. That's very funny. Very funny, Ohio Dog. Let's see what else. Ohio Dog says he also felt like he slept only a little bit of time last night and more susceptible to April Fool's jokes. Yeah, this is one of those things you just got to be really careful, right? You got to be really, really careful. And I've told you before, I think I've said this, is that I've always kind of wanted to do like a really elaborate April Fool's joke here, to like come in and just do something crazy. But it's one of those things like you can't do this halfway. You got to be all in, and it's got to be very elaborate. Otherwise, it's just not worth doing at all. So one of these days we'll probably do that. You know, like Tony Kornheiser and Mike Wilbon, and pardon the interruption, they've always done like an April Fool's themed show. And one of these days we may try to pull something off, but you can't just go halfway with it. And there's just so much of it out there. My kids love April Fool's. Kids love all those holidays. Like they love to pinch you on St. Patrick's Day. They love the April Fool's stuff. I mean, you know, just like when you have young kids, stuff like this is always a very big deal. Dedrick Frazier says, good morning. It sounds like the wide receiving core has a lot of potential despite being thin. That with multiple tight end sets. Yeah, listen, I'm right there with Dedrick on this. And one of the things we're going to get into in a moment. A couple of guys that Georgia fans really like, excited about, Dominic Blaylock or Rick Gilbert. Boy, yesterday, Kirby Smart. Pretty interesting updates on both those guys. Get you more excited about G-Day, I see. Randy Hall asked about C.J. Washington's injury. Yeah, unfortunately, Kirby did go in a lot more detail about that yesterday. If you watch the DawgNation YouTube page, it's kind of near the end of the press conference. Kirby, you know, kind of described the whole deal there about kind of where he was, what the reaction was to all of that. So Kirby gave a pretty detailed response to all of that. Dogs Only says it was an amazing Diamond Dogs win last night. It is. I think I'm going to talk more about this in the show. I'll give you a little bit of a brief preview of this before we welcome in everybody else. There's a part of me that almost enjoys beating Florida in other sports more than football because, and Auburn's kind of turned into this a little bit too. It's like when you're not very good in football, all of a sudden you start to think of it yourself. See if you notice on social media. There's a certain stripe of Florida fan, and Auburn fans are becoming a little bit like this too, where they think of themselves as now more sophisticated. Like, these redneck Georgia fans and Alabama fans, all they care about are football, but we care about other sports around here. You know, listen, we're sophisticated. We're erudite. We care about other sports. We're not just a football factory. We care about all sports. So there's a part of me that actually enjoys beating Florida in another sport other than football, just because that's all they've got left. And when you could take that from them too, why not? Even more enjoyable. So I have to admit that thought was going through my mind yesterday. Jacob says that Kirby was talking about being a pretty nasty injury. Yeah, unfortunately he was, and I hate that because, I mean, the early returns were he was having a very good spring. I mean, obviously, hate for anybody to get hurt, but you know, it's got to be just very, very sad for him to know and frustrating to know that he was having a really good spring, and now you're dealing with a pretty scary situation there. So, yeah, and Kirby also gave a little bit of an update on E.J. Lightsey yesterday, too. So I know some folks had asked about that. So if you kind of go near the end of the press conference, you get more of those from yesterday. You can hear that straight in Kirby's words there. Tiffany Art says, do you know who all's going to be at the bookstore on G-Day? I know it's like 6 people, and let me see if I can find this for you. Are we on the other platforms? All right, hold on one second, Tiffany. Let me see if I can just find this because I have an email about this. Let us see here. Of course, it's always kind of hard to talk and do this at the same time, but let's see if I can find this quickly. G-Day bookstore. Let's see if this works. Here we go. I think it's worked. All right. So on, that's last year. I worked so hard to find this, and that's last year. So I do know. I just don't have it in my email right now, but I'll try to find it for you because it's like 6 big names, all of them like national championship type dogs, a whole bunch of people. I thought I had this, but that's last year's. Wait, maybe no, maybe I have it. Yeah, I got it right here. Okay, I got it right here. So on Friday from 4 to 6 p.m., you got Thomas Davis. You also got Isaiah Wynn, and you've got Trayvon Walker. That's really cool. On Saturday from 10 until noon, you've got Jamari Salyer. You got Quay Walker, Justin Schaefer. That's really cool there as well. So here's the 6 once again. Thomas Davis, Isaiah Wynn, Trayvon Walker, all Friday, April 15th from 4 to 6 p.m. Saturday from 10 until noon, Jamari Salyer, Quay Walker, Justin Schaefer. So there you go. I knew if I fumbled around long enough, I'd probably find it. All right. We are on all the platforms now, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Good morning to all you. Jeff Sentell coming up. Good stuff from Kirby Smart. A little bit of a look at Broderick Jones in today's show. So very, very busy on a number of fronts here in just a little bit. Let's get 1 or 2 more comments before we get ready to go. Matt Rukavina checking into the DawgNation.com homepage. Always love to see that. Tiffany said that she'd heard Jamari on Before the Hedges saying that he was going to be there and a couple other guys going to be there as well. So that's the full list right there. So there you go. Alan A. on the subject of Florida and Auburn wishing they were Georgia. Yeah, it's been very fun, very interesting to interact with those fan bases as of late. By the way, we have a couple of very funny golden shoes kind of related to stuff like that a little bit later on there too. Randy Hall hoping for some legacies on this class. Hemingway said he's got a black screen. Yeah, we're here. We've been going now for a few minutes. So we are here and we are ready to go. And Tiffany, we'll have some more stuff on the website about the bookstore stuff there as well. So if you didn't get everything that I gave you right there, it will be showing up on the website here really soon there too. Brian Whitehead looking to hear what DawgNation is going to be doing for G-Day. Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool, and I'll tell you more about that. I'm thinking that Tuesday I may be able to say something about that. So looking forward to that. And I know we also, Brian, I think talked about some books there at the bookstore too. We're also going to try to make that work. So if nothing else, you can stop by with yours. But I think we're going to try to do something related to that too. At least we might. But that's not the big announcement. There's something else kind of going on too in addition to our normal stop there at the UGA bookstore, which we are looking forward to. All right, so what do you say we get started? Let's see. It's a very, very busy show today. Good stuff from Jeff Sentell. A lot of recruiting news out there, including decision day for a 5-star prospect. Speaking of 5-star prospects, one of those at least may be getting ready to come into his own at UGA, and some of the stuff that has been said about him recently kind of leads us into all of that. So that's going to be really fun. So a lot of fun things going on. Also, some really cool stuff from Kirby Smart yesterday that gets you really excited about what's going to go down at G-Day. So let's get ready to do all that right now. Busy, great, fun, exciting show. Great way to close out the week. Glad you're here for it. It's DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. It's presented by Kroger, and it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
I'm always excited about Georgia football, and this time of year, I live with the excitement about G-Day. It's just that time during the spring when you get to make it feel like football season. The weather's usually really nice, typically speaking. Always a great time to be in Athens, and it's a great preview of what you might see for the upcoming season. G-Day is just always a lot of fun. And then it kind of goes away, and you kind of move into kind of summer mode there for a little bit, and you blink your eyes, and it's fall again, and now we're playing college football, and that's just kind of the way our life kind of works, year after year after year. And yet there are some moments in which G-Days may be a little bit more anticipated. There are some players from time to time that get you a little more curious, and just any kind of glimpse of them whatsoever, or any kind of thought about how they might fit into the pieces involving Georgia football just gets you a little bit more keyed up maybe than normal. This may be one of those years where that's kind of true. I was already pretty excited about G-Day, but some of the stuff that Kirby Smart has said over the course of the last 24 hours, I think probably gets me even more excited because there are a couple of pretty significant fan favorites that I think we're going to get kind of a long look at. And in one case, it may be a little bit of a glimpse at what this guy might look like playing for Georgia. And in another case, it might be a little bit of a reminder of how good a guy used to be prior to a little bit of injury stuff. So I think G-Day starts to feel really, really fun after listening closely to some of the stuff that Kirby Smart said. I know some of our DawgNation guys like Mike Griffith and Connor Riley got a chance to watch some practice yesterday. I know they'll have some more reporting coming up on that in the very near future. So this is a pretty cool time to be following Georgia football all the way around. And, you know, I was talking to Terrence Edwards yesterday, and I kind of jokingly, because Terrence has long been a mentor of Eric Gilbert, the terrific former five-star prospect, transferred into Georgia last year from LSU, and obviously had a little bit of a setback and stepped away from football for a while, but now he's coming back. There has been a little bit of buzz about Gilbert here this spring, about what he's been able to do. And so I jokingly, sarcastically said to Terrence Edwards yesterday, so Terrence, is Eric going to be an All-American level player this year, or is it just all SEC? And I was kidding. I was laughing when I said that. But I thought that Terrence had a great response back to that. He said, BA, let me tell you what an All-American season is. Just being back on the football field and contributing. That's an All-American campaign from Gilbert. And basically, Terrence talking about how proud that he was of the way in which Gilbert has worked to be back in the position that he's in. And all indications are he's really done pretty well. And yesterday, you got a pretty thorough assessment of Smart about what he's seen thus far from Gilbert, including specifically one thing in particular that maybe he wants to see more of, and how they're evaluating Gilbert. To Smart, this kind of comes down to one word right now. This is Kirby Smart from yesterday on this.
The biggest hurdle for him has been the conditioning level. You know, I think that's the biggest thing, is like learning the playbook and the conditioning level. Catching balls, that's not like he can catch balls. He's a good athlete. You know, he came back a little heavy, and he admittedly would tell you that. He's done a tremendous job of being in our cardio club and dropping weight. Probably, you know, I'd hate to say, I don't know, somewhere between 65 and 70, 265 and 270, and he's dropping. And, you know, like what's happening right now, he's starting to make more and more plays, but he's having to really work his stamina to be able to sustain during practice. And I mean, like play after play after play after play he has to take. It's like, oh man, I got to condition myself to get back, go again, burst, and run. But I've been, you know, pleased with Brett, and Oscar have taken a tremendous load on, have gotten a lot of reps.
So obviously, to be 265 or 270 pounds right now, that's really big. And to think that he lost weight, a significant amount of weight, to get down to that weight, well, that's also pretty eye-opening there as well. But let me say this way, and I think you'll understand what I'm saying when I say this. Let's say there were one of two things that were true about Eric Gilbert. What's true here, which is, hey, he's making plays in practice, but he's a little heavy and he's having a hard time maintaining his stamina. Well, let's say the opposite was true. Oh, he's in great shape, but he's not really making plays yet. Now, let me ask you a question. I don't know what Kirby Smart would say in response to this, but let me ask you this question. What if I told you that one of those two scenarios would be true for Gilbert? Which one would you rather have true? He's making plays, but he's a little heavy, or he's in great shape, but he's not really making plays yet. I have no problem telling you my answer to that question is almost instantaneous. Give me the guy who's making plays, and we'll find a way to slim him down, as opposed to the guy, you know, who looks great but not quite got that fire to go out and make plays as of yet, maybe not quite figuring out how to go out there and do that. You know, I don't care how you look, I care how you play. And so if you're showing those flashes of being able to go get the football, then we'll figure out a way to get you in better shape. I mean, this is you don't exactly turn to me for like health advice, but this is just basic calorie deficit stuff, right? I mean, like if you do what those Georgia nutrition people tell you to do, in a few months you're going to look exactly like you want to look. You know, I used to previous life used to work for a radio station. I used to go spend time Falcons training camp. I'd spend a couple weeks there back when it was in Greenville, up there at Furman. And back in those days, early 2000s, you know, for the most part, they let the players eat whatever they wanted to. It's almost like the coaches sometimes were more restrictive with their diet during training camp. The players were, because the thought was, hey, the players are working so hard, they're going to burn off anything they eat anyway. So eat ice cream, eat, you know, red meat, eat whatever you want. You know, fried foods even sometimes, because you're going to burn it off anyway. That's kind of the way things used to be. It's not quite that way now. But the overall point still remains is like, listen, when you got a big engine that's powering a guy like Eric Gilbert, the fuel is going to take care of itself. You're going to burn off that fuel. There's no problem with that whatsoever. So While that is certainly very big, bigger than big in some respects, if he's making plays in practice, that's sort of all I really need to know. I feel like the strength and conditioning staff, the nutrition staff will take care of everything else. But the fact that he's making plays during practice, at least that's what we've been led to believe, that's kind of the thing that gets me more excited about G-Day, because I want to see what this looks like. I want to see how the guy that I saw at Marietta High School, who was, I just thought a star in the making, how all of that now projects in the uniform that I always hoped he would eventually wear, which is with the Georgia Bulldogs. What does G-Day look like for Eric Gilbert? And to kind of go into this a little bit more detail, Smart was asked directly yesterday about the position. At one point in time, we exclusively thought of Gilbert as a tight end. Then Gilbert kind of made it known that he wanted to play wide receiver. That's kind of what Georgia brought him in as. If you look at rosters, to the extent they mean anything, Gilbert's listed as a wide receiver. But apparently, according to Kirby Smart yesterday, that's not what he's really considered as anymore. Once again, Kirby Smart on a guy that we're looking forward to hopefully getting a chance to see at G-Day, Eric Gilbert.
We just think he's a tight end. At the end of the day, it's last year. It was probably a greater deficit. It was something that he wanted to be more wide out. He also was much lighter, so he's a little heavier now. He's more physical now. He's a tight end. That's what he's probably going to develop. There's a certain requirement as a receiver it takes to play receiver in terms of stamina, running every play, going to cutoff block. At tight end, our tight ends are receivers. They do play receiver, but they don't go out all the time, split out wide, and that's something that he was having to do. And he's comfortable in the role he's in right now, and he's really he's got a ways to go. He has not arrived, but he's come so far from not being able to execute a play to being able to execute a play, know what to do, and then hurry back and get the call on the next play and line up. I'm just proud of the way he's fought to learn it. He's fighting stamina out there because he's taking so many reps, and I'm really just pleased with his growth.
And listen, that one little phrase there is probably an intentional message by Smart to carnival barkers like me who want to kind of hype things up just because it's fun to do so. As I said before, the chatter around Gilbert gets us more excited about G-Day. But as Kirby Smart says, hey, he hasn't arrived yet. Let's don't make this more than it is, which I think is certainly a fair thing to keep in mind. But I want to see him, and I'm guessing you probably do there as well. And I got to tell you, Gilbert as a tight end, it's the position I think he probably should have always been, more likely playing anyway. That is a potential problem for a lot of people around the SEC and for anybody else who might line up opposite UGA. If you're safety or if you're defensive coordinator, are you excited about trying to find a way to cover him? Todd Monken showed you a year ago. He's pretty creative when it comes to finding ways to use tight ends that are like wide receivers like Brock Bowers. Well, lo and behold, that's kind of what Eric Gilbert is there as well. That's a huge potential problem for a lot of folks on Georgia's schedule for the upcoming season. Can't wait to see him on G-Day. Another guy that I pretty much feel the same way about, too, is Dominic Blaylock. And listen, it has been a long journey for Blaylock. 2019 starts to just feel kind of like a long time ago. I'm always amazed by how fast time goes by, and what was at one point in time last year all of a sudden turns into several years ago, and that's kind of what 2019 sort of feels like now. It's one of those things that a minute ago seemed like yesterday. Now it seems like ancient history. But when Blaylock was a freshman way back then, he's doing some very big things for Georgia. He's a very reliable receiving target for a team that didn't have nearly enough of those there that season. And since then, it's been a lot of injury setbacks. And I think sometimes what I would feel like if I was in that position, knowing how hard the physical therapy work is even to get strong again in those joints and those tendons and everything else, to do the work that needs to be done with all of that. It'd be very easy just to become discouraged. But according to Kirby Smart yesterday, it sounds like that's not the case. And we even had a chance to hear from Blaylock yesterday, which you can actually go watch on the DawgNation YouTube page. You can see the full conversation, full interview with him. I'm sure we'll get a chance to play some of that for you coming up in future days. But in particular here, once again, a guy that we're hoping to see a lot of on G-Day. What Kirby Smart said about Blaylock, I think, is not to be missed, and it's a reminder of just how special of a player he can be for Georgia now that it seems like he's far healthier than he's been in quite some time. Kirby on Blaylock once again from yesterday.
Oh, he's wired the right way. This kid came up tough. He's had two older brothers that helped, toughen him up. He didn't grow up soft. He's not afraid of contact. He never complains. He just doesn't complain. And if anybody has something to complain about, it'd be him. All he does is work. And, he's probably still not to his electric in terms of vertical speed, but he's really savvy route runner. He does really well in the slot. He just made a play in 2 minutes that was a big play, a diving catch that set the offense up to win a 2-minute situation. I mean, he's getting better and he's getting more confidence in that knee, and I'm excited to see where he goes. But more than anything, I'm excited to see him get out there and play, because our team takes on a lot of his resiliency DNA, and it's something we sell our players on.
I just love that. I'm excited to go out there and see him play. I am too. It's worth $5 to me to see Dominic Blaylock on G-Day. That's how much the tickets cost. It's worth 2 hours of my time if I'm not able to be in Sanford Stadium, but tuning in on television to see Dominic Blaylock play, because I know how hard he has worked to get back to that spot. I remember how good he used to be. I got to tell you, as a fan of this team, which y'all know that I am, seeing Blaylock, seeing Gilbert, to me, that's really exciting. That's really pretty fun, regardless of who it is that's throwing the football and which team they're playing on. I just think that's really fun. And let me also say one more thing on this there as well, which is, yesterday we had Terrence Edwards on the show. One of the things he talked about was, hey, what he thinks that Arian Smith and C.J. Smith, those two blazing speedsters at wide receiver, what they have a chance to do for UGA. And as Kirby Smart was talking there, he was talking about how, Blaylock may not be quite full go yet in terms of his explosiveness and things like that, but he did mention, savvy route runner. And I don't know, y'all tell me, it seems like when it comes to like playing personalities, the wide receiver position probably makes more room for more different styles, playing personalities than anything else. It's like, and we have this conversation, pretty naturally. Like when I'm talking to high school coaches, we're talking about their wide receivers. Hey, who's your speed guy? Who's your slot guy? Who's your possession receiver or whatever else. These are just kind of the sort of language that football fans kind of understand. And, if you're the most well-developed offense you can be, you want all of those different types. Sometimes you don't quite have that speedster. When you don't have that, it makes everything else a little bit harder. But it sounds like, according to Terrence yesterday, that you've got guys like CJ and Arian that might be able to take the top off of defense, which leaves a lot of room to work underneath. And that's where you want to have, as Smart said, the savvy route runner. That's a personality that can show up and make an offense better. And at one point in time, that's what Blaylock really was. Certainly a sure-handed guy. And now he's healthy enough again that he can be again maybe what he showed flashes of being in 2019. I don't know what all this adds up to yet. We got a long offseason to figure that out. But seeing it with my own eyes coming up on April 16th, that's something I want to do, and my guess is you probably do as well. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Kroger. And hello to you, and thanks for being with us. Happy Friday, April Fools. Keep your head on a swivel about any kind of crazy stuff there. We don't have any of that planned for you today. Some of y'all may end up tricking me, but I won't trick you. But either way, we're glad to have you as a part of the program here today, whether you're tuning in at 9:45 for First and 15 on the DawgNation app or DawgNation.com. 10 a.m. after that, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, on the radio at noon, on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, and as a podcast, wherever you find them. Apple, Spotify, just all the various podcast platforms. It's been a great run for the podcast, and we're certainly thankful for all of that. We appreciate you showing up for that each and every day, having a great time on all of that. By the way, big thanks to our friends at Kroger also for making all this possible there as well. And listen, this is a time, I would say, that my non-Georgia football, non-college football related conversations, it seems like a inordinate amount of those discussions are about right now how expensive everything is. And maybe the thing that's the most expensive of all right now is the fuel that you're putting in your vehicle. We are all living with that because we all have to drive to get to work. That's how we fund our life, is by moving around and getting to work, and the fuel that powers the vehicles that we use seemingly has never been more expensive. And Kroger's here to help with all that. They've got some fuel rewards that you need to take advantage of, because you're going to earn a fuel point for every $1 you spend in a Kroger store or online at Kroger.com. You can also earn twice the fuel points when you purchase gift cards and during special weekends throughout the year. So big time savings opportunities coming your way via Kroger with the Kroger fuel points and the double fuel point opportunities there as well. Also check out Kroger Boost for more on that too. But Kroger.com, you can go on the website and find out more about this. Stop by in store, learn about that there as well. But basically it's as simple as this. Spend money at Kroger, earn those fuel points, and in some cases you can even earn twice the fuel points there as well. And who wouldn't want to do that? All right, we'll get Jeff Sentell. We'll talk some UGA recruiting with him in just a moment. Before that, let me set up the conversation with Jeff by going around the doghouse. And I'm going to invite you to check out something. Now, I wanted to play you some of the audio from this. I just don't have time to. We've already been on the air for a little while. We just can't always do everything I want to do. But Jeff's interview with Jamari Salyer on Wednesday, I thought was really very interesting. And we're going to talk about the Salyer thing with Jeff a little bit more in a moment. But in the midst of talking about his own career and everything else, there was one thing that Salyer kind of got into that I thought was really pretty cool. He had some very nice things to say about Broderick Jones. And he talked about the way in which Jones stepped in the national championship game and really helped Georgia win that football game. Does Georgia win the title game if Jones doesn't step in and play right there? I don't know. But certainly Jamari was impressed with the way that Brod stepped in there and with the way that he did that. In fact, one of the clips that is worth your time from the Salyer interview is one in which he kind of talked about, hey, remember when that game kind of seemed at its lowest point? You know, the fumble or whatever you want to call it had occurred, and Alabama had kind of taken the lead, and you know this was the time that Georgia needed to rally. And Jamari kind of talked about the way in which the offensive line kind of became the focal point for that. The two tight ends in the game and going power and being strong and reasserting yourself along the offensive line of scrimmage. How that helped Georgia set up the very successful fourth quarter that it enjoyed. And we're all reminded that, hey, you know, Broderick Jones was a part of that. That the thing that helped Georgia regain its confidence after a low point was what was happening there along the line of scrimmage, and the insertion of Broderick Jones was a big part of that. And I said before, it's worth your time to go find the YouTube page. It's Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger from Wednesday. A really good conversation with Jeff, with Jamari Salyer in discussing all of that. But lo and behold, I already kind of had that on my mind. And then yesterday, Broderick Jones also met with reporters, and he kind of talked about the experience of playing in the national championship game. Michael, do we have the Broderick Jones here? Can we play Broderick on the subject of what it felt like to him to be in that title game, the way that Jamari Salyer described his impact? This was Broderick Jones from yesterday.
You know, it was just a surreal feeling being able to play in the national championship game. Like, that's just like a huge dream that any kid that plays on a college level dreams for. So it was, I know, like, I didn't play as much or I didn't start, but I felt like I've gotten better over the past seasons that I've been here, preparing myself and just, you know, being able to step up when my name is called.
Let's be clear about one thing. Broderick Jones didn't just play in the national championship game. He stepped in, played very well. He may have saved Georgia's bacon. So Broderick's being a little humble there and like, oh, man, it's just great to be here. You know, it's like what do the Academy Award winners say when they're not slapping each other? I'm just thankful to be nominated. You know, like Broderick's like, hey, I'm just thankful to be nominated. It's just an honor to be nominated. No, that's not what what the real story was. The real story was he was inserted into the game and he provided a level of energy to Georgia that actually helped propel it to victory. But it's cool that he's being a little bit humble about that. And one more thing to kind of tie this back to the Jamari Salyer thing for a moment. The other thing that Salyer kind of said in passing with Jeff on Wednesday was, you know, Jamari, much like Broderick Jones is going to have turned out to do, he waited a little while. Jamari was like big-time, 5-star, elite, megawatt prospect for the class of 2018, but it's not like he just stepped on this campus and dominated. He didn't do that. He waited. He had to wait a little bit. And one of the things that Jamari said with Jeff is that he actually probably learned more about the game while he was waiting. That the time he spent watching was actually maybe very instrumental for him in terms of learning what it takes to be the kind of player that he eventually became. And it remains to be seen how well Broderick Jones has used that same time for him, but he's also done some waiting here. You know, he had to be inserted into the lineup because previously he was not in the lineup, especially as an offensive tackle. So what did Broderick Jones learn while he was watching? Well, we're about to find that out because it certainly looks like left tackle is his spot to have here for this upcoming season. Another curiosity for us on G-Day there as well, but kind of growing into a Jamari Salyer-style role for the Dogs this season. I think that's pretty good stuff and pretty good to think about. In fact, Kirby Smart yesterday also went into a little more detail about, as Broderick Jones does expand his horizons here now as a presumed starter for Georgia, what that means from him, what they want to see more of. Kirby did talk about that yesterday. Here it is.
Well, I think confidence has helped, and I think he learned from some really good leaders. You know, Jamari and who am I missing there? Sailor, Jamari and Justin. Both those guys were great leaders. I think he learned a lot from them. he has to continue to learn to. You got to be productive and physical yourself. The one thing about those two guys, they were extremely physical. They enjoyed the contact part. The run game came easy for them. That for Broderick, he has to really work and strain at that because he's a really good athlete. He's a long guy, so pass pro is much easier for him. But run game, he has to get his pad level down and strain to become a good player. But he's trying to be more positive with the other guys and encourage them when there's mistakes because, 2 years ago he was that guy. And he's growing into his role, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in light of what Smart says there and the way in which Broderick's kind of taking the baton from Jamari Salyer, going back and hearing some of the stuff that Salyer said about Broderick on Wednesday probably makes a lot of sense there. And it's cool to see this development taking place because while, Broderick appears ready to take that next step, this is maybe the role that maybe a guy like Amarius Mims might find himself in the following year, right? Going into the 2023 season, it may be Mims' turn to do what Jones is doing right now, and patience is a virtue in life, and it certainly is one of those things in college football where the patience that Broderick Jones has shown, allowed himself to grow both physically and spiritually and mentally and everything else, now makes him more ready to be a starting left tackle at Georgia, maybe more so than he would have been in the past, and maybe other 5 stars kind of waiting in the wings. Maybe they'll get the same chance to do that there as well. And obviously it's cool to have a guy like Jamari Salyer to learn from and to grow, kind of in the shadow of. And that seems to be all progressing the right way for Georgia. I do have high hopes for this offensive line this season. And the presence of Broderick Jones now as a full-time starter is clearly a pretty big part of all of that. So really, really good stuff there around the doghouse. All right, busy show for us coming up here. Before we're done, I had a little bit of a, what do you call this, like an epiphany? Is that, am I saying that word correctly? I had a little bit of an epiphany about the Georgia-Florida rivalry yesterday. Kind of, I mean this half serious, half kidding. I'll probably tell you about that before the show is done. There is a really cool new event coming up with the Atlanta Braves. I want to make sure you're aware of this before we're done the show today. Obviously, just happy to have Major League Baseball coming back. Braves defending World Series champions. That's really cool, too. They got a lot of stuff going on. But one thing in particular I want you to be aware of that involves the Georgia Bulldogs. I'll tell you about that coming up before we're done. But for now, busy in the world of recruiting. A lot going on. 5-star getting ready to make his announcement today. 5-star getting ready to visit UGA. All kinds of cool stuff and a little bit more on the Salyer stuff from Wednesday. Let's do it all right now here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger, with our buddy Jeff Sentell. Good to have him for some recruiting talk and all of you on board here today as well.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
So I say hello to Jeff Sentell here, DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. And, of course, Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger on Wednesday. Good stuff from Jamari Salyer. We were just talking about that a moment ago. And, Jeff, there was a lot from Jamari that I loved. But a lot of the stuff on Broderick Jones and that national championship game in particular, to me, kind of stands out there because, not only did he say some nice things about Broderick, but one of the things that Salyer talked about the other night was when the moment was kind of at its lowest after, whatever had happened there that, was ruled a fumble that turned into an Alabama lead, it was really leaning on the offensive line of scrimmage that allowed the Georgia to, according to Salyer, a guy who was part of all this, to regain that confidence necessary to kind of march through the fourth quarter and allow Georgia to propel itself to victory. Broderick Jones would have been a part of that. I know Brod talked yesterday a little bit after practice, but this is not just a young guy getting inserted into a lineup. This is a young guy who got inserted into a lineup and kind of changed the game while he was in there. And Jamari Salyer with you on Wednesday on Before the Hedges was pretty articulate about all of that. What did you think of Jamari in general, but the stuff in particular that he said about Jones?
Well, Brandon, it's really one of those full circle moments for myself as a reporter, because I remember talking to Jamari in like his sophomore year, freshman year at Pace, and hearing about his dreams as a young man to go play college football, go play in big games, maybe win a national championship, go get drafted. And he's walking that path right now, and he's walking it really with his head held high. You got my mind churning, Brandon, about that. And I mean, Jamari, Mr. Salyer really gave away some of the secret sauce for a lot of Georgia's success this year. I would challenge anybody to tell me how successful they think Georgia would be if you could not let them line up in 12 personnel or those heavy tight end packages a year ago, because that's really where Georgia was at its best. And I think that personnel grouping really fit what Stetson Bennett was going to do. And then you hearken to Broderick Jones, and Brandon, you probably not going to like me for this, but I think harkens back to something you said all along. Keep stacking up those elite offensive linemen, those elite players at anywhere, and sooner or later one of them's going to hit. And I think one of the biggest things right now that folks are worried about in spring practice is Amarius Mims. And they're like, hey, Amarius needs to get in there. It's his time to play. He could probably start for almost every team in the SEC right now. But Broderick Jones is hit, and he's really stinking good. So it's almost like, somebody's not going to play and somebody's going to wait. But Salyer is the perfect example because he didn't play right away. He shared with me on Wednesday night that he needed guys like Kendall Baker and Lamont Galliard and Andrew Thomas to get in his head and said, man, young buck, I know it's not your time right now, but if we need you, we know you're going to be ready. We know you're ready to help us. It's just not your time right now. And I think that is so vital when you look at every position at Georgia where you've got a guy like a Mims waiting his turn, or you got a guy like a Shmuel Munden or Xavier Sori, all those positions at Georgia, and even these new faces, Brand, that are showing up, all those early enrollees. Everybody wants the quick, fast, now, gimme. But I think Jamari Salyer is a perfect example. Didn't really play until his third year at Georgia, but boy, when he started playing his third year at Georgia, he not only excelled as a starter, he excelled as a starter at a different position and was ready to play at center and was ready to play at guard. That's why Jamari is going to be so valuable in the NFL.
Well, I think you're right about that, and it's one thing that we've talked actually a lot on the show about the last couple of days. Kendall Milton brought this up last week about his need to be patient when he arrived at a place like Georgia because everybody's good once you get here. And admittedly, as you said, I've talked about this plenty, that you do want to stack up talent and let it sort itself out once it gets here. If you want the strongest possible roster, that's just what you have to do, which means everybody's got to get used to, maybe not rising to the top quite as quickly as they want to. But, Jeff, it's not just players who have to be patient. It's fans there as well. Fans have a tendency, and I'm not picking on fans because I am one, but fans have a tendency to, if a guy's not playing right away, they think something's wrong. Or if he does play soon and doesn't play well, they think something's wrong with that there as well. Like, they just want to accelerate some fans anyway, just want to accelerate the news cycle so quick, which is, hey, if you're not dominating from day one, then you're never going to be any good at all. And that's just not even logical. I mean, that's just not. We have so many examples in Georgia football history, including maybe right now, of guys that it took a couple of years for, but the wait was certainly worth it. And I just hope we can all kind of keep that in mind that, hey, a lot of folks may have wondered at one point in time, what's wrong with Broderick Jones? Because he wasn't playing right away, but now it seems like he's arriving right on time. And Jamari Salyer is kind of much the same way. Other guys, other positions, kind of the same thing, where we're going to ask players to be patient. Hey, don't jump in the transfer portal right away if things aren't going perfect for you. But those of us who are fans of this team, we ought to be a little patient too.
I think that's right. I mean, the main thing is this. People are going to portal away from Georgia. But the thing to watch for is to not start grabbing your pearls and clutching those pearls when so-and-so leaves Georgia and starts right away at this other school. That says a lot more about the school they're going to than Georgia or maybe the player and his skill set themselves. And you can look at a lot of positions at Georgia, Brandon. I think Jamon Dumas-Johnson is going to be one of the breakout stars of not only the spring, but of this season. But even he had to wait behind 3 first-rounders or 3 second-rounders or third-rounders. That's what you got to do. I mean, Quay Walker, a great example. Channing Tindall, really, the bulk of his NFL resume is largely the 2021 National Championship season. And it's enough. And I think it will eventually be enough for a guy like Broderick Jones. He's a wire-to-wire, wall-to-wall starter at left tackle. Jamari even said that, hey, Broderick Jones is probably a better pass protector than I am. And Brandon, Jamari did not give up but 1 sack in 2 years of SEC play, playing out of position at the premium position at left tackle. And who got him on that? That was Will Anderson, when maybe kind of sort of he jumped the snap a little bit. Jamari said a whole lot. I thought it was one of our better before the hedges DawgNation conversations ever. But he left your appetite, man. He told you a little bit of nuggets there about Robert Beal going to be a bad man in 2022. And he talked about Michael Williams and about his welcome to Georgia moment. And he knew, he even said, hey, the young buck even got me a couple of times in practice on a few pass rushes because that's what's supposed to happen in practice. And it just keeps churning, Brandon. These guys keep coming in. And if you listen really closely to the ground, my friend, you can hear that the Sean Washington, the Jalen Walkers, the Bear Alexanders, the Michael Williams. Heck, Christian Miller's not even at Georgia yet, but he's there every weekend, and he's there all the time watching practice. Watch really quickly, Brandon, these next 18 months, how those guys form the new core of what I see is going to be another championship-level defense at Georgia.
All right, let me talk to you about one more thing here real quick, which is that when Jamari shows the replica Indy car from the national championship, it's just like the one that was like in downtown Indianapolis. There was a Bama one and a Georgia one there that day. Jeff, that's one of the coolest artifacts from Indianapolis that I've seen. And, listen, I've tried to do some Google searching on this, and some other folks have there as well. It is not easily found, this like Georgia-themed Indy car with the national championship box kind of around it. Was this a player-only gift? Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. That's the photo right there. What looks to be like the Georgia Indy car with the national championship logo. Is that a player-only gift that Jamari showed? Because that's not easily found by the searching that I've been doing. But that's one of the coolest things that I've seen in terms of coming back home from Indianapolis. You know anything about that?
Well, Brandon, you have all those DawgNation Daily spiders and webs and that network you have of folks. I can't believe the collective power of your audience can't cough up and scrounge up about 5 Indy cars. To me, it sounds like Jamari didn't even know where it came from. It sounds like it was a player-only gift. It sounds like, it's kind of like those bowl rings and those gift bags, Brandon. I don't know if it was Georgia themed. I think it was maybe a generic, not generic, but
like just a championship logo, yeah.
Baseline Natty Championship Indy 2022 logo. I think that's what it was. But, Brandon, I know some friends. I got some friends of mine that are avid Georgia collectors, and they find a way for things like bull watches and rings.
Yeah, there you go.
Jerseys and stuff like that somehow show up on the internet for sale. And I bet there'll be some of those trickling around as well. But, Brandon, it sounds to me like you pay a couple pennies, a couple steak dinners for one of those cars.
Yeah, listen, if that's you may be right. It may just be the generic Indianapolis logo. But if that's a Georgia Indy car and the players got one, I don't know. For the players who are watching right now, HMU, you may get a little NIL deal out of that if I could get my hands on one of those cars. I say half kiddingly. A lot going on with Georgia recruiting. Speaking of NIL, 5-star prospect LT Overton getting ready to make his college decision later on this afternoon on ESPN2, I think it is. Either way, yeah, ESPN2 this afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Does not seem like the good guy is going to win this one. How much of this ends up being about, I don't know, Jeff, previous ties the Overton family may have had at Texas A&M, or a willingness to Texas A&M to kind of entertain some of the stuff maybe the Overton family kind of wants. What is the autopsy on this for how it never really materialized with Georgia and Levius Overton after Overton reclassified?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm buying the deal. And it's funny, a lot of the things you hear is Georgia's recruiting him as an outside linebacker, not as where most of the industry sees him to continue to get bigger and be an interior player, maybe a 4-eye, maybe a 5 technique, something like that. For me, I don't know if I'm buying that A&M, which is the clubhouse leader, is ponying up. I'm going to use that word inappropriately, maybe, or maybe appropriately, ponying up 2 scholarships for Overton and his brother. Brennan, in this day and age, it may just mean something like, the NIL deal happens for the brother, which allows the younger brother, which allows the older brother to come in as a preferred walk-on, and maybe the costs of attending out of state at Texas A&M are a little bit different. The thing for me is that I always thought that Oregon was the team to watch there in the long run, meaning maybe if the NIL deals matched up, because Oregon doesn't have a surplus of D linemen like Overton in the program or even in the 2022 class, whereas Texas A&M and Georgia do. If you had to argue what were some of the best positions that Georgia and Texas A&M both loaded up on, that would be the defensive line. I think memory serves, Brandon. I think that Texas A&M is still going to bring in about 2 or 3 defensive linemen, front 7 players, higher rated in the 2022 class than even LT Overton with his reclassification to 2022.
What do you think about the idea of the reclassifying anyway? I mean, to my mind, I'm not an expert on basketball recruiting, but it seems like the reclassifying thing there has been kind of a thing for a while. We've had some of this in football. Jake Bentley, I guess, comes to mind here. The defensive back that went to North Carolina maybe a year or so ago. But, I mean, do you think the notion of reclassifying is going to become more of a thing? I mean, we certainly know what the idea of a redshirt year looks like. A lot of these guys have 2 8th grade years. But when it comes to, like, reclassifying and moving up a year, do you think we're going to see more of that? Because for a guy like Overton, who I think is a really good prospect, I've seen him play, and I think he's good, but he's stepping into an Aggies program that is really deep along the defensive line. They have been very successful in particular when it comes to defensive line recruiting. I think this is a kind of an interesting test case. Do you see it that way?
Brandon, here's what I see it, and maybe I hear a little bit of Kirby Smart in the back of my ear when he talks about, that Keith Jackson, whoa, Nelly, about what's going on with guys coming in and playing early in the trenches in the SEC. But I think it's totally different to reclassify as a corner, reclassify as a skill threat, reclassify as a lockdown corner, reclassify as a quarterback. I think that's a little bit different than reclassifying into a class 1 year early with a trench role, with a trench mob, warfare down there, Brandon. Man, it's different down there in those trenches. A lot of grown men, and you do not need to be 1 year advanced, skipping school a little bit to get in there in the trenches with those guys. I think it's different. I'm going to say it pretty bluntly, man. When LT Overton goes from the class of 2023, without a doubt one of the top 10 prospects in the country in 2023, and then when he goes to the class of 2022, he becomes, in my mind, a top 40, top 50 prospect, considering what he looks like, considering his skill set, considering his junior year where he was banged up a lot. Got a lot of basketball, got a lot of, athleticism, which translates to the whole hardwood, which makes him an elite prospect on the defensive line. But I think that's a whole different ball game when you've got a defensive lineman reclassifying, jumping in a year early, and then expecting to play right away in the SEC. I just don't see that happening in a lot of places.
I think you're probably right about that. A couple other things here. It looks like Joenel Aguero. I know you had some social media stuff about this, and Aguero himself has kind of talked about this there as well. He's on his way to taking a Georgia visit this weekend. There are a lot of very interesting safety prospects. There's Aguero on Twitter right there. There are a lot of very interesting safety prospects in this class, including a really good one in-state. But Aguero is certainly one to like there as well, and it sounds like Georgia's got a chance to impress him this weekend. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Brandon, that one's going to be very important because I think Georgia was in a good spot there with Aguero about 4 or 5 months ago, really 4 or 5 months ago. And then his great friend, Kamari Wilson, chose Florida. And then you've seen him visit, let me see, Ohio State, LSU back-to-back weekends. One of those weekends was with his 7-on-7 team, so that's not exactly quite the same. So I think this is a get reacquainted visit with Georgia, kind of wake up the echoes a little bit of why he loved Georgia, get to meet a new DB coach, although I think that's vernacular that doesn't really matter to this conversation because if what I'm hearing is correct and what we're learning is correct, Fran Brown is really the specialist there for the cornerbacks. And then, Coach Muschamp, Coach Boom is the guy that has really headed up the recruitment for Aguero for quite some time. So I think the safety specialist, the safety coach is still Coach Muschamp. So I don't know if the new coach, the new defensive backs coach in title there really affects Aguero. Brandon, he's another highly volatile, very interesting prospect at safety. He's going to bring the wood. He's going to bring up a lot of things that everyone likes about Lewis Dean. Now, he's not 6'2" and about 195 pounds like Lewis Dean is or was when he got to Georgia. So I think Aguero's a little bit different. He played some cornerback at IMG. He's really physical to me. He really looks special, playing inside the box, coming down inside the box in run support. And he's fast, Brandon. He's about a 4.3, high 4.39 or so on the laser when they timed him at IMG as a junior.
So let me finish with this then, Jeff. There's been a lot kind of going on lately. You've had some really good updates at DawgNation.com as of late. As we get ready to say goodbye to you here, what else do Georgia fans need to know as this busy month of March continues to roll on. Georgia had a lot of key visitors last week. Once again, that's kind of on tap here too. First scrimmage of the spring takes place on Saturday there as well, but the recruiting work's not slowing down. I've heard, rumblings about Vic Burley being back in town, things like that. But what, if you want to just give us a quick thumbnail here of what else we need to know about Georgia recruiting as we move towards the weekend, how would you draw it up?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna just say this is the key thing for here is the offensive class at Georgia. That needs to be installed. I think the big thing that's happening, Brandon, is the wide receivers are nibbling at the hook. Let me say that. B-Mac, Todd Monken, the quarterbacks. I think the right wide receivers are nibbling at the hook, and they're nibbling at the hook a little bit more than they have in the past, even last year when Georgia had a lot of near misses. I think what I want folks to recognize is, remember, we did not have recruiting visits like this a year ago until June the 1st. And that's given Georgia a lot more runway to really get in with a Hakeem Williams, a Tyler Williams, a Devin Hyatt, a Jalen Hale. I mean, all those receivers that you've been frothing at the mouth for, Brandon, those guys are giving Georgia a greater look right now, and there's more chances for Georgia to get in there. And I can't say enough about how I think BMAC is going to help Georgia's recruiting. It's already helping Georgia's recruiting with a lot of guys where guys were feeling a certain sort of way about maybe checking out BMAC at Oregon and then checking him out at Miami. And he's just brought that all over to Georgia now when he's got the drapery of a national championship elite program around. Brandon, there's some 5-star defensive linemen coming to see Georgia again this weekend. But the thing here with this class, I'm going to keep hitting it over the head, even though this is a defensive-minded, defensive-centric program, is the offensive class has to come together in this class. And I think the big storylines right now is what Georgia can do on the offensive front with wide receivers, those playmakers. Deuce Robinson, the 5-star nation's #1 tight end, might even be a Freddie Freeman-type baseball player one day and not even play football at all. He's supposed to be in town this weekend as well. The offensive side of the ball, maybe there's a young man named Manning that becomes the figurehead or the spearhead for the offensive recruiting. If he comes to the fold in Georgia in the next 2 or 3 months, I think that's what you got to watch for.
Jeff, really good stuff. Thanks for being here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger today. I know you'll be all over the recruiting news as it continues to unfold, and we will look forward to speaking to you again next time.
Hey, man, good luck with that car, Brandon. Somebody help him out. Somebody help BA out with the car.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Somebody who's just tuning in is like, oh, BA needs a car? Yeah, this is not Eric Dickerson, the Trans Am. This is something slightly different than that, although we do have a very similar story to that kind of thing coming up here in just a moment. In fact, we have a very busy show still left for you. We'll get to that story in just a couple minutes' time. Braves have a big event coming up for Dog fans I want you to be aware of. I'll tell you about that before we're done. Speaking of baseball, Georgia had a big walk-off win last night against the Diamond Dogs. We'll have some fun with that. So we still have a lot left to do on the show today to close things out on the Fridays. Before we get into any of that, though, we're cruising around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean. And, of course, your chance to be on board with us, Independence of the Seas, coming up very, very soon. Almost showtime, go time for the very first ever Dog Nation cruise. Your chance to cruise with Dog Nation as we leave out of Port Canaveral on April 25th, going to Nassau in the Bahamas, going to Perfect Day, Coco Cay. Great private island exclusively for those on a Royal Caribbean cruise. We're enjoying the thrill side, the chill side there, and the really cool things on board the wonderful Independence of the Seas. That means specialty restaurants like Chops Grill and Playmaker Sports Bar. That means cool bars like the Lime and Coconut right there next to the pool and all the other stuff that's on board there, Royal Promenade and everything else. It is an unbelievable experience, and I want you to be a part of it. So go to DawgNationCruise.com or go to the top of the page at DawgNation.com, click in the link, and while there's still a little bit of time, you can get booked up to join up with us on the very first ever cruise of the Dog Nation. That is coming up. All right, cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean, and recently SEC brethren Missouri hosted former Georgia quarterback JT Daniels. Now Daniels, though, has another official visit that he's set to take. Pete Thamel from ESPN, I think the first to report here, that Daniels will take an official visit to West Virginia. This is not unexpected news. This was kind of thought to be the third team that's in this race for right now after Daniels had previously visited Oregon State, previously, as I said, visited Missouri, now on his way to a West Virginia official visit here in the upcoming days. And so after that, I guess we'll see if Daniels is then ready to make a decision. He obviously can't leave and move on to a new school until he finishes his coursework at UGA, but that doesn't preclude him from making a commitment decision. So we'll kind of find out. The best I can tell, it's kind of a Missouri, Oregon State, West Virginia type of thing for JT Daniels, and so we'll see what his next home ends up being. But Pete Thamel is out there with that reporting on that today. I mentioned crazy recruiting story. So Fred Taylor is a former Florida running back, and Taylor was on one of the Barstool shows. So he's on the show. I think we have. I think we have the quote here. So the host, I didn't know who they were. I know some of the Barstool people. I didn't know these guys. So they were asking, "Hey, I heard you got $50,000 in a duffel bag from Georgia." Obviously, Taylor ended up going to Florida. And so what Taylor says is it wasn't a duffel bag, and ha ha ha, guffaw and laughter ensues. But it was a lot of cash, man. When Taylor was asked if the amount was indeed around $50,000, he replied, "It was up there. It was just closer to $50,000 than $30,000. Those were just the days." He goes over to say that in terms of how he would get money, I would go over to this guy's place and say, "Hi, I'm in West Palm. I'm visiting my mom," and he'd say, "Come over to my place." I'd get $1,000 or $1,500 or $3,000 every time I went over, and I went over 3 or 4 times a week. He said, it's pretty funny from Taylor, and obviously a story like this went viral, and I think the way in which a lot of people use a story like this right now too is for people who have any kind of like skepticism about NIL whatsoever. They say, well, see, this kind of stuff's been going on forever. Paying players didn't just start with NIL. It's been going on forever based on Fred Taylor's story right here. And listen, in my official capacity as host of DawgNation Daily, I'm not willing to stipulate neither confirming nor denying anything like this has ever happened in the past. As far as I know, it's all conjecture as far as I know here in my official capacity on all of this. But if we were to stipulate, just for the sake of conversation, that improper benefits have been a part of the college football story in the past, here's the one thing you can't deny. The system still worked fine. And I'm always kind of fascinated by this. That there are a lot of people who will say, oh, yeah, this has been going on forever. Fred Taylor got $50,000. So-and-so got, whatever. I mean, everybody has their own story they can kind of fill in with all this, and I'm not in a position to deny any of that, nor am I in a position to confirm any of that, but those stories have kind of gone on forever. If we assume for the moment all of them are true, the craziest rumor you ever heard that was true. If we assume whatever crazy, casino chips or whatever other thing that you've kind of heard over the years happened, let's say it all happened. The system through all of this has just kind of thrived. That somehow keeping that kind of under the table or keeping that kind of off to the side, somehow, some way, the system just kind of functioned fine. And so the issue here is not, is paying players going to be harmful to college sports? Because some people will tell you that's been going on for quite some time. Maybe they know the truth. Maybe they're just believing wild rumors, but some people would tell you that. I think as we move into this new age, though, it's not the introduction of money that has the potential to change all of this, because maybe that is true. Maybe those crazy rumors of the past, maybe some of them were true. I think what a lot of folks are curious about is, what about introducing the other voices in the players' heads? How much is that going to, how much is that going to complicate things? All of a sudden now it's not just, relationship with player and coach. Now it's relationship with player, coach, and 15 other things. I think that's one of the things that some people may have some questions about. But one way or another, the Fred Taylor story kind of went viral. It involved Georgia, so I thought you ought to know a little bit about that. A couple of basketball notes here real quick. First of all, Final Four this weekend. I'm pretty excited about it. Duke, Carolina, big-time game. Villanova, Kansas, they are certainly blue-bloodish type programs. Kansas for sure, Villanova as of late. So this is a pretty high-powered Final Four. I know it's a hot ticket in New Orleans. Great venue for something like this. So I got to tell you, I'm pretty excited about the Final Four this weekend. I'm kind of curious to find out maybe if you are there as well. And then one more basketball note. So this is interesting. There were a lot of Georgia fans, former Georgia players, Georgia stakeholders, donors, things like that were hoping that Jonas Hayes, the former Dog player and assistant, would be the head coach here. Georgia instead going the direction of experience with Mike White from Florida, and Jonas Hayes, after that, stepping in as an interim head coach for Xavier, because Xavier moved on from its previous head coach, eventually hired Sean Miller to come back home to Cincinnati there to coach the Musketeers. Is that what they are? Bringing them back into the fold. But Jonas Hayes working as interim during the NIT and actually led Xavier to the NIT title, cutting down the nets. I guess you cut down the nets for an NIT win. There's a photo of him actually cutting down the nets right there for those of you watching on video over Texas A&M, who also felt like it should have been in the NCAA tournament and had a nice run through that postseason, but Xavier ends up getting the win. So I think it does set up some curiosity about what happens next for Jonas Hayes after a lot of folks questioned his level of experience, and he went out and won some games as an interim head coach. Now listen, I like Jonas a lot. I still think that given the choice of having a head coach who's been in the NCAA tournament quite a bit and had some success in that tournament, at least a little bit of success in that tournament, I feel like Georgia probably made the right decision here. I have to admit that I feel that way, but I am happy for Jonas, and I am certainly very interested to see what happens for him because he certainly appears to be a coaching star on the rise. It's just a matter of how quickly that rise is going to take place, but pretty good stuff from Jonas Hayes right there. We'll make that cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. Now, speaking of really good stuff, I am really excited about this as we head towards the month of April, which actually kind of begins today. We are about to see Major League Baseball coming back. And obviously this is a special time in our city to have Major League Baseball coming back because it comes back with the Atlanta Braves as the reigning World Series champions. Things have been really good around here as of late, and I hope you have noticed that. Braves reigning World Series champs, Georgia reigning national champs, and as we head towards the start of the Braves season, we get a chance to celebrate both those things at the same time, and this is a really big deal. So the Braves are about to kick off the season. They're going to do what they're going to call a Week of Champions, or Champions Week on April the 7th through the 13th. This is a great way to welcome back the Braves to the start of the season, back at Truist Park playing games again. And there's a very special event going to be going on April 13th that I want you to know about. That's a day game against the Washington Nationals on 12/20. At 12/20, that's the game time there that day. So here's what's going to happen before the Braves take on the Nationals on April 13th at 12:20 p.m. You're going to have both trophies in the same place at the same time. The Braves World Series trophy is going to be there, and Georgia's National Championship trophy is going to be there. You could literally get your picture taken with both trophies at the same time. That's going to happen from 10 a.m. until noon there that day. Now you got to have a game to get to get the picture of the trophies, but who wouldn't want to go to the game anyway? So that's even better to have a day game. Day baseball is so much fun, and both championship trophies there together leading into the day game against the Nats makes it even better. Let me tell you how much fun this is going to be. We're going to do DawgNation Daily that day live we're going to do Sport and Social, which is right there in the Battery. So the great venue, Sport and Social, terrific restaurant, cool place to hang out before Braves games anyway. We're going to be there on April 13th doing our show, and both trophies, the Braves World Series trophy and the National Championship trophy, going to be there together. If you've got your game ticket, you can get your picture taken with both trophies at the same time. That is going to be awesome. Once you come say hello to us, it's going to be a cool day to celebrate the Braves, celebrate the Dogs, and do it all in style. So if you want to find out more about this, the website to go to is braves.com/champions week. That's braves.com/champions week. Let me say it one more time. Braves.com/champions week. We'll see you there on April 13th, the 12/20 game against the Nats, both trophies, but also the Braves back celebrating their World Series as they get ready to begin the 2022 campaign right there in Truist Park. Going to be really good stuff. All right. Let's roll through some golden shoes here before we play the music, because I got a lot of those to give out today. Some really fun stuff, including this one, our first one, kind of an old school blast in the past. You kind of always love to see the folks going to take it back to a bygone era, and that's what our first golden shoe is for today. Our buddy George on Tap sharing this. The dog kind of relieving himself, if you will, on the Florida helmet. He says, one of my best dog buddies and housemates made this back in the 90s. It's been copied many times. I know DawgNation Daily will like this one. I do there as well, because we always like beating up on those lousy, stinking Gators. But anything that kind of throws it back to the back in the day, I'm always very happy about that. So George on Tap, a great Twitter guy, we'll give him a golden shoe for that today. By the way, speaking of prolific Twitter folks, another golden shoe going the way of Mad Dog here. This is very funny. He says, when's the last time your team won a national championship? He's got Bill Clinton with the Tennessee hat on for 1998, George Bush with the Florida hat on for 2008. So pretty funny stuff from Mad Dog, who gives you the hashtag Own the East, something that Georgia has certainly made its own plenty of times, and looking forward to hopefully doing there again in 2022 there as well. Very funny stuff from Mad Dog. And then Keith Pitts with a response to all that. I haven't seen this particular meme. This is very well done. For those of you listening radio podcast, this is the old school Bulldog face logo that was very popular like back in the 80s, but the hat is the 2021 National Champions hat. This is really well done by Keith Pitts here, and a great meme in its own right. Really, really cool stuff there. And then the coolest thing of all, how about last night on television, walk-off fashion, dogs win, the Georgia baseball account said, as Georgia gets the walk-off win against Florida last night, lousy stinking Gators, with Jonathan Cannon going today for the Diamond Dogs, so a chance to do some big things against those lousy stinking Gators. You love to see that. As we fire up the music, by the way, golden shoe indeed for the Diamond Dogs and that. Here's something that kind of occurred to me, and I mentioned this to our video audience before the show began. Celebrating that win last night against the lousy stinking Gators made me realize I think there's a part of me as a Georgia fan that actually enjoys beating Florida in sports other than football, more than football for one reason in particular. It's like Florida fans have kind of taken on this deal of, since they're not very good in football, they now think it's more sophisticated to like other sports. Have you noticed this? Auburn fans are kind of becoming the same way there as well, where it's this thing of, oh, you redneck Georgia fans, all you care about football, but look at how good we are at blah, blah, blah sport. So when Georgia can beat Florida in one of those other sports, it actually almost feels a little sweeter to me. Not to say I'm getting tired of beating Florida in football, because I never will, but that's just a feeling that's occurred to me. I don't know if it's occurred to you there as well. By the way, speaking of that long title drought for those lousy, stinking Gators, how long has it been? We'll keep reminding them, 4,831 days. Boy, tough to be a Gator, and it's going to be tough to be a Gator again. 211 days from right now. Georgia back in Jacksonville, beating them up again. That is your Gator Hater Countdown to close out the week. This is DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. And on video. Time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. R.S. Andrews, the one you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs. R.S. Andrews shows up on time. They do the work that's promised for the price that's promised. That means heading towards the spring season, hot weather, AC units. Let's face it, there's always that little bit of anxiety, because when it's been a long time since your AC's been, as they would say back in Hall County where I grew up, when you hadn't cut it on in a while, when you cut it on for the first time, sometimes you were sort of worried that it's not going to quite cool the house down the way you want it to. Because deep down, things 20 whatever years old, the thing's past its shelf life. But guess what? My friends at R.S. Andrews, they might be able to breathe a little new life into that tired, old, after its life expectancy unit. They might be able to get it back to factory fresh specs even. So you got to find them online at rsandrews.com for more of that. All right, to close out the week, we're going to go to Facebook first, because there have been a couple times this week where I've been a little slow getting to our Facebook friends. So let's do that now, and then we'll find out what they're arguing about on YouTube. We'll say hello to DawgNation.com. Again, we have a meeting today. Don't have a lot of meetings, thankfully, but we have one today. And not say I'm not looking forward to it. I'm just saying, but today we have a meeting to go to. David Johnson says, have a wonderful weekend, BA and DawgNation family. David, to you and yours as well. Hope you have a great weekend. Looking forward to it. Philip Jordan Will says, a lot of non-football school fancy book learning going on outside these borders. Yeah, listen, that's true. Let us see what else. Lucy Bowers Boykin gives them a bless their heart. Those poor creatures. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Chad Williams talking about Bama. Yeah, that's always great there as well. Keith Folds enjoyed one of our golden shoes there today. Let's see what else. Pete Williams says, I wanted Hayes as soon as Green was fired. This is one of those deals where sometimes in life there are just comparisons, right? And the comparisons live on forever. Like, think about, like if you're a Hawks fan, when they took, what's his name from North Carolina instead of taking Chris Paul, like the decision not to take Paul kind of lived with them forever. When, there's all these kinds of things kind of go on. Like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields are kind of always going to be compared because they were in the same class together. So whatever Jonas Hayes does from here, maybe he comes to Georgia and he's an assistant here next year, or maybe he goes on to be a coach somewhere else. Eventually he will be a head coach, and what Georgia could have had in Hayes will be discussed for quite some time. And all we can do is share our opinion on this in the moment. And my opinion on this in the moment is, I think I'd rather have the experienced head coach, even if he is a guy that's been at Florida. I think I'd probably rather have that than Hayes, but there are plenty of people like Pete who feel the other way. And it's not obvious right now. Those people won't eventually be right. I'm talking about the Pete side of things here on the Jonas Hayes deal. So this is just one of those, hey, here's what you could have had, and we'll see how that works out. And these why ads and things like that get the big bucks, because it is certainly a pretty big choice. Jamie Huff also feeling the same way. Let's see what else. Gerald Harmon says Rush Probst told him about the Fred Taylor story. Yeah, listen, Rush got no shortage of stories now. There are no shortage of stories for sure. Marshall Fleming says that was old news, that we were investigating for the Fred Taylor stuff by the NCAA when he was at Florida. He says, look it up. Actually, I would like to, like a lot of that stuff from like kind of I guess that's like very early internet era, but in terms of how the world kind of functions, it's kind of pre-internet. I would like to know and read more about kind of pre-internet college football, like the people who were following recruiting by calling a 1-900 number, or the just the way in which, like, the newsletters used to get mailed out. Like, that's just kind of before my age. I would like to know more about that. I actually really would read more about that kind of stuff, I think. Let's see what else. Oh, somebody got some good news here. Let's see who this is. I gotta find, somebody had some good news. I'm not finding it. Yeah, it was Marvin Williams. Thank you. Is it? Oh, yeah, Matt Rugavina says, I got some good news. Just found out all my skin cancer's removed. Woohoo, time for 10 a.m. drink. Congratulations to you, Matt. I am so happy to hear that. I always appreciate when you guys come in here with your news. Good news, bad news, whatever else. The things that are going on in your life certainly matter to us. And, Matt, I am very proud to hear that for you. That is awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. We are super happy about that. Gary Holt said, is Stetson Bennett going to be as motivated as he was last year now that the pressure is off? Yeah, I think for a guy like Stetson, unfortunately, the pressure never quite goes off. For the good or for the bad, there are always going to be folks saying, well, maybe so-and-so should be quarterback. The so-and-so seems to change, but the questions themselves don't seem to change. So if nothing else, I think that's a level of motivation for Stetson Bennett, I think. Keith Folds also says he's going to have a hard time holding on to his job. Well, here's the one thing I think we can say for sure, is that based on the chatter that's been out there, other guys have gotten their chance to show what they're all about. So if they are ready for that next step, it sounds like they're getting their chance to show that. So we'll see. I'm not quite so sure I know how all this is going to play out as of yet, but my guess is there'll be plenty more said about it as time goes on. And listen, I don't mind telling you that when it comes to, like, I don't think G-Day ultimately matters very much, but it is a little bit of a snapshot here. Bennett didn't throw the ball much G-Day a year ago. You would presume he's going to throw it more this year. I do think that, if you want to command the attention of the room, which I think that Bennett did last season, but if you want to carry that over to the upcoming year, then, it's one of those things where I hesitate to, like, emphasize this point too much. But I don't think it's unreasonable to say, hey, go out there and be the best quarterback on G-Day. Throw the most touchdown passes, deliver the football. Now, you're playing against the number one defense and some things like that. But go out there and be that guy. There's an element of which that football leadership is powered by your credibility, and your credibility comes from how you play. So, take command on G-Day and set yourself up to be the focal point going into the summer. I don't want to make too much of the spring game because I think we can do that from time to time, but I don't think it's unfair to look at a guy like Stet and say, hey, go out there and show everybody what you're all about on April 16th. And there's a very good chance he'll go do that. Chase White said going to G-Day this year for the first time. That's awesome to hear, Chase. I think you're going to really enjoy it. It's going to be a fun day. Paul Moon says, if we really want to talk about RBU using actual facts, the top two rushers in SEC history are Georgia running backs. Alabama's top back is 13th. Next are 22nd, 23rd, and we've got another one 20th. So this is an example of, there has been an argument on our YouTube page going on about Georgia versus Alabama running backs through history, and I'm not kidding about this. I think it's been going on for a year. At least a year, right? We were definitely in the old studio talking about this. It's actually kind of amazing how long this has gone. Cody Ledoux checks in, our Bama guy, one of our Bama guys. If you had to pick one position that you're wanting to see most at G-Day, which one is it? So not quarterback, he says. So part of me would want to say inside linebacker. I also think that sometimes it's kind of hard to judge defense during a spring game because you're just not going to let your defense do very much. But if it was like a true real football game, I'd probably say inside linebacker. But since it's more of like a spring game, kind of a made for TV type event, I'm going to say wide receiver because a year ago, Georgia threw the ball a ton to A.D. Mitchell, and it turned out Mitchell was a pretty important player for Georgia last season. So do we see something in terms of who gets pass-catching targets that also gives you an indication of what might happen on the field here this year? That's, I believe, my answer, Cody. It's a good question. I'm glad you're here. Let's see what else. And yes, see, like G. Grace, man, like he plays like the wrestling heel in here pretty well because he gets people stirred up. He says, we've had 4 Doak Walker winners and 2 running back Heisman winners in 10 years at running back. Yeah, but G. Grace, Bama Bump is a thing in recruiting and when it comes to these awards too and stuff like that. Half these people who vote on these awards don't watch any games. They just, see the Bama helmet and that's all they vote for. Let us see what else. Let me go to DawgNation.com for a moment. Then we got to get off the air. Did somebody get a Rich Dollar? I told you, I said that I won't do any April Fool's jokes to you. If I ever do one, I'm going to do a big one. And it's one of those things where, do I really believe I could pull off like a really big one? But if I ever do one, I'm going to do a big one. But I said, so I won't do one to you, but some of y'all may get me on one. Rich got somebody else on one. So this is what Rich did on our DawgNation.com comment section. He says, I still can't believe it. Luther Burden is in for the transfer portal and coming to the Dogs. He tried to get folks on that. And Randy Hall caught him on the April Fool. So Rich, that's well played. That's a pretty good one. Here's what I'd say is it would have been more likely to kind of catch somebody had you not put the coming to the Dogs. If you'd said, hey, y'all hear Luther Burden's in the transfer portal, that's the kind of thing would have had a better chance of catching the big fish on that. But to add the coming to the Dogs part maybe made it a little bit more suspicious in the eyes of some, but that's certainly a very good try. Big Daddy, thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Randy Hall says Overton going to Texas A&M. That seems to be the word out there right now. Jacob Yarbrough says, I heard Eric's actually down to about 250. I think Kirby Smart said a little heavier than that yesterday, but the truth is I'm not worried about his weight. I'm just telling you right now. I really feel like that being around the program, doing the things that he's going to be doing over the course of the next few months, like he may be big, but he is big. Muscle weighs more anyway. So he may be 240 or whatever else, but I don't think conditioning is going to be an issue come summer. I mean, it may be right now because he's, for a while he's away from the team. Hemingway says no follow-up during the Kirby presser concerning Bennett after all the buzz last week. He says, is this really a story? If so, why no media follow-up? Yeah, I told you my thought on this was I just didn't think what Kirby said about Bennett was all that different than what he always says. Now, yesterday, there was a follow-up that we played on the show from the radio interview that Kirby did. And so if you want to go and hear a follow-up to this, we played the audio for you yesterday when Kirby was Buck Bellew on the Atlanta radio station 680 The Fan, and Buck asked him, I think he was joking, hey, is everything okay with you and Stetson? Kind of joked with him about that, and Kirby gave his answer. If you'll listen to the beginning of yesterday's show, we got that clip for you. You can hear that then. So at least a little bit of follow-up there, but yeah, that was true. A couple more here. Randy Hall says Ole Miss going to be the golden golf ball. That's actually kind of funny. One of our guys of the day, he nailed that prediction on that. He was absolutely right. All right, final comments. We got to go. DSA1 says trash talking is fun until someone's feeling gets hurt. All of a sudden they're coming up on stage and slapping you. I think I'm now officially tired of the Will Smith, Chris Rock thing. I was fascinated with it for a while. Now I'm just sort of done with it. Like every joke has been done. Every hot take has been heard. And, man, they are some doozies. Wow. But I think I'm just kind of done with it now. I guess I was a little bit surprised. So Chris Rock did his first stand-up special, right, in Boston, and I think it was Boston, and he didn't really have much to say about it. Maybe he just didn't quite have good material on it yet, but that's a big moment for him, and he didn't quite get that taken care of. Zachary Whitfield going to the baseball game tonight. Man, I'd love to do that. I don't. It's one thing I don't get a chance to do as much of as I'd like. Not living in Athens, I don't get nearly as much of a chance to go to the baseball games as I'd like. It's actually semi-hard to get tickets. More than semi-hard to get tickets, to be honest with you. But I'd love to go to more baseball games. DMart42 says, I could care less about the actual slab, but the memes have been fire. Yeah. It's one of those things that sort of lives more in meme form than actual form probably now. That's pretty good. All right, Facebook, and then we're done. Let us see what else. He says, Matt Rukavina says, forget about skin cancer, which he said he just got cured from. He says, I just saw my wife spend on Easter decor at Hobby Lobby. Listen, I know that feeling. Let's see what else. Miriam Corbin, thank you so much. So nice to hear from you. Brian Brown on the subject of Branson Robinson. Yeah, I'm excited about it, man. Robinson, like, he looks exactly like a person that should be playing running back at Georgia, doesn't he? I mean, mature looking. You know, obviously a lot of these guys are going to be in great shape, but there's a certain maturity to Robinson. I've told you this before, and maybe this only makes sense to me. But I remember when Nick Saban first got it going in Alabama, the thing that really impressed me about his players when you would see them in person, it's not just that they were big. It's like they all had good posture. It's like, you know, they were big men who carried themselves well, and that always stuck out to me is the way they all, like the Bama players that Saban was recruiting, they're all like shoulders back, and it was just like this thing, like just kind of walked into a room, you know, just impressive. And I just feel like there's a lot of that at Georgia now. Like Branson Robinson is not just, hey, this is a running back, but this is not a guy who like sort of saunters in a room, shuffling his feet, looking down at his shoes. This is a guy who's, you know, shoulders back, standing up tall, you know, nice posture. I don't know why that matters to me, but I just feel like there's a certain way in which a good athlete just kind of carries themselves. Like how tall do they stand? In the case of Robinson, he's just a good-looking dude. So yeah, I think that he has a very big chance to do something at UGA. I think that's probably quite true. Gary McConnell says Stetson's still the champ. No doubt about that. What else is going on? Greg Childer says, no doubt if UGA loses a game or two early to midseason, there's no reason not to play someone else. Lord in heavens and mercy, if Georgia loses a game or two at any point in the season, but by midseason, oh my gosh, I'm not quite sure at that point in time it's going to matter who's playing quarterback. It's going to be, you know, 5-alarm fire around here if that'd be the case. Daniel Aldridge says that Robinson's got a little swagger. I think he does, yeah. But it's not like I don't know. It's like there's you know that phrase that you get used from time to time, like the idea of like an athletic arrogance? Like it's like you don't want someone who's actually arrogant, but you do want someone who plays with a little bit of cockiness about them or a little bit of a confidence, and that's for sure. Keith Folds, Jamie Huff on the subject of him kind of reminding you of Nick Chubb. There's a lot of that Chubb that kind of comes out in him. I think that's probably about right. A lot of that. Anything else? Randy Hall says about Branson Robinson, great attitude, great work ethic, great demeanor. Yeah, for sure. All right, we got to get ready to go. Keith Folds asked about Stetson Bennett's brother. The honest truth is I don't know much about him. I think he's a wide receiver, but I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on him as a preferred walk-on. Matthew Goodwin, this is a really good point. Matthew's 100% right about this. He says, I need to stop leaning over so much. It is really true. I have very bad posture. And I try to work on it a little bit. Sometimes you'll see me kind of work on it a little bit. Part of the reason why we went to the what do you call this? Like a boom mic? Is that what that's called? Part of the reason we went to the boom mic thing was because the other mic was lower, and one of the things I have a tendency to do is like sort of eat the microphone a little bit. And when the microphone was lower, I would lean down even more. And so I am trying to work on my posture because it is not good. And like some of the, every now and then, you remember the, I'll get ready to go after this because nobody cares about this. But like the other day when I had a little bit of a back issue, I stood up out of my chair because I was going to go show you all the other studio room. And I got to go, ugh, as I did. It made me sound like an old man. But the truth is that particular day I was having back issues. I don't have a ton of back issues because I don't ever get sick at all. But when I do, half the time I think the way in which I kind of I just kind of slouch a little bit. Part of the reason maybe I'm impressed with other people's postures because I have such awful posture myself. But my natural kind of like doing the show pose is kind of down here like this. It is not good posture. That is one of the truer things that has been said. I do not have very good posture, and I need to work on that because. And Matthew says he's kidding, and I know that he is. But the truth is, I do think about this quite a bit. Like I've actually tried to do some things, change my chair, change my mic, trying to get a little better posture. But I don't have much of it, to be honest with you. But maybe I can kind of get there. Joseph Kennedy says, I think we go 12-0 again. Right now, that'd be my prediction there as well. Now, what happens after that when the real season begins? Who knows? I mean, like Georgia's in kind of a weird place. Like when I was after this, I promise we're getting off the air. When I was a kid, the Florida game was essentially the end of the season. You know, Georgia would play Florida, then would play Auburn, then would play Georgia Tech. That was the way all seasons ended. Those were your final 3 games. Well, now the Florida game is like the halfway point of the year. Like it's like the 7th or 8th game of the season. You got 7 or 8 games more to go after that. We're just in a very different college football calendar now. That it is quite possible that there is a long wait until September. That's when the games begin. But then there's another wait through September, October, November to kind of find out how good Georgia truly is, because there are just very likely so few teams or possibly even no team on Georgia's regular season schedule that can threaten it at all. Now, between road games at Mississippi State, road game at Kentucky, road game at South Carolina, could one of those end up feeling like a formidable challenge? Maybe so. Could Tennessee be good enough to maybe challenge Georgia? Maybe so. I told you going into the game last year I had a little bit of concern about Tennessee. Ultimately, they ended up, for the most part, being unfounded after a little bit of a fast start. Georgia handled it. But I don't think it is a wild prediction to say Georgia will be 12-0 in the regular season. Not only will Georgia be favored in every game that it plays in the regular season, there is a very reasonable chance. I mean, realistic chance that Georgia's a double-digit point favorite in every regular season game. So you're talking about 12-0. And so one of the questions we asked the other day is, so are you going to tell me that the reigning national champion, 12-0 regular season, would, just for the sake of conversation, lose the SEC championship game and then be excluded from the college football playoff? That to me would seem like a pretty inequitable thing to do, but I don't know. That's what the debate's going to be for the upcoming year. So going into December, very much in the thick of the national championship race with a chance to probably rematch against Alabama again, and who knows what after that. I would say that's on our horizon. I would say that's probably on our horizon. All right, very good stuff. Check out the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, AJC.com. I mentioned to you earlier the Atlanta Braves. They're getting ready to get going, and if you want to find out more about the Braves, AJC.com, a great place to do that for all the great stuff as they get ready for opening day. Big preview in the print edition on Sunday. Also, e-papers got more for you. And you go to ajc.com/Braves to stay up to date on all of that. By the way, the Hawks last night qualified for the postseason. Is that right? Knocked out the Knicks and somebody else. Now I guess they're trying to work their way out of the play-ins. Do I have this correct? Sarah Spencer knows all about this, and she's got a great new podcast up as well. The terrific one, the Human Highlight film, Dominic Wilkins, highlight reel. Dominic Wilkins is going to be a part of that, so make sure you check that out. And good stuff on Arthur Blank, his thoughts about the future for the Falcons, the quarterback position. A lot of sports stuff online there. Good stuff. Hope you have a great weekend. R.S. Andrews, check them out online, rsandrews.com, for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised, the price that's promised. You have a great day. Back here Monday, DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. We'll look forward to talking to you then.